Welcome to another episode of Anyways. Today we're talking about Season 2, Episode 10, Advances, None Miraculous. And in this episode, William Bullock, son of Martha and Seth Bullock, died. And the town of Deadwood reacted to that.
And there were advances and none were miraculous.
Yeah. And I think once again with the show, all these murderous cowboys and killers were like, oh, well, I have a very human reaction to this. They all showed that they were like, oh, wait, again, these people are humans and they have feelings. And it's always very affecting. William Bullock, there's a criticism by Esther Rosenfeld on the podcast Hoopleheads and other people, basically that William Bullock is a nothing character. He's like barely there. I think you had this criticism maybe too.
Yeah.
Just like, why do we care so much about this very minor child character? It's very sad, but why? And I think my argument, my defense against that would be we still get to see, much in the same way that everybody treats Sophia as a symbol of hope, they also treat William Bullock, the way that people treat actual children as symbols of innocence, potential, and not only symbols, actual human beings that are innocent and full of potential.
Yeah.
And so all these murderers and thieves have this reaction where they're affected. And to start with my favorite murderer or thief, E.B. E.B. is like, everyone's standing outside a gape, and you pointed out that Tolliver has his tongue is out of his...
Well, he does that patented thing where he comes in and he goes...
Yeah,
with his tongue in the
he
side
looks
of his
very
face.
helpless.
Yeah.
And he's, pretty soon he's barking orders at somebody. But Farnham, first he's describing the scene in a Shakespearean way as if we can't see it and we're in a play, which is not, again, it's his role as a fool. But he says something like, they come, they're coming down the street. And then Dan goes in and he starts.
Well, he's also talking, Farnham, about basically how there are these movings ongoing and he has no idea what's happening because nobody keeps him in the loop anymore on anything because he's nothing.
Yeah. But Dan, he's kind of shouting angrily his room prices at Dan. Or no, his room prices at the preacher, but Andy, first
he talks about his shining his boots.
Yeah, your laundry prices.
Your laundry, is like, if you leave all your dirty laundry here, maybe I could do that. And he's he's getting really like pissed off at him. But of course, Dan doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about.
And so just threatens to beat him.
But EB just feels, again, left out.
And then he says, I forget what can't mend a broken heart. But he's implying that his heart is broken by William Bullock.
Right.
I guess, or maybe that he's left out.
Well, no, I think that's it. His heart's broken because he feels like nobody wants him around.
Well, I thought it was from, there's also another moment where, right before that, when he's talking about, them walking down the street with William's broken body, he says, I wish him well, Yeah. It's very, there is a realization that this child is dead.
But I think it doesn't hit EB really definitively until that end sequence where everybody suddenly realizes that he's dead.
Yeah.
And then you get to see that more in his face.
Yeah. But he does express sorrow or some sort of sorrow for, he wishes the child well. It's
tinged with other things, but that's EB in a nutshell. He's always, even in a moment like that where it's like this child's been like hit, he can't be like, it doesn't sound sincere what's coming out of his mouth.
Well, but it's not, I don't think it's because it's not, I don't think it's because it's insincere. It's because he just doesn't practice in showing emotion.
Yes.
He can't do it.
Yeah. He's also very self-centered.
And very strange.
Yeah.
Well, we can go through all the different characters and their reactions to William Bullock's death, or you want to just start with the plot and talk about Hostetler, and we can talk about both with Hostetler and Samuel Fields.
We could start with the death and then work from there.
Okay.
So, you brought up an interesting point, which is how the fuck does everybody know when William Bullock dies?
Yeah. Well, they know the preacher, Andy, who we haven't seen since last season when he was a gambler.
That I don't think most people recognize who he is, but I think all they see is a Bible in his hand and a guy dressed in all black, and they assume what it is.
And they all react. And there's this wonderful sequence where it shows the town basically stopping their vigil. They've all put on their like nicest clothes to stand around, Alma's like in her nice red dress at the window. But everyone's super kind of dressed up, and all they're doing is standing around. And we went back and rewound it because we were trying to figure out how the Jim telepathically learned that William had died when only, Martha and Seth, but I think the intention of the scene we decided was that they see Andy walk by and they think that means that.
And then that's when Al leaves.
Yeah, that's when Al leaves, which signals to Merrick to put his head in his hands. And then Dan like takes his hat and then Blazonov drinks, and they're all like, "All right, our vigil's over."
Yeah. And then you get to see a tearful Al. I mean, his eyes get glassy. He doesn't shed a tear.
Yeah. Well, he tells Trixie to leave because he doesn't want her. I think he's thinking, being around Trixie will make me sentimental, and I can't be sentimental in front of all my henchmen.
Nope. He talks about it many times in the show about how he can't be a part of many goings on that other characters can be in on. He has to be removed from things. That's part of his lot.
Does Al ask after the condition of the boy? There's someone later in the episode who asked after the condition of the boy. Oh, no, I think it's Francis Wolcott, who's like, "Do we know anything about the boy's condition?" And Cy remarks, it's interesting which comrades get sentimental. And, I don't know. But I really love this focus, and I think it's great. Also with Farnham, later when he's yelling hotel prices at Andy and teasing him about
like 50-cent discount for clergy, $6 extra for setting up a dice game in your room.
Yeah, but he's cutting onions.
Yeah.
Because he's crying.
Yeah.
And he wants to hide the fact that he's crying. So he just has this huge tray of onions, and he's just very carefully cutting all of them.
Yeah.
And it's, again, I think he's affected.
And then Richardson's over there with his antlers.
Yeah, praying to the moose antlers with his deer antlers, and
praying to the hammer and bone or whatever the fuck. Whatever the fuck Farnham said to him in that little speech when he catches him praying to the moose antlers.
Oh, I'm not exactly sure.
He says something about hammer and bone god or something. I don't remember the fuck. And
God of hooves?
Something like that, yeah.
I don't know. I really, yeah. But let's just go through these characters, because Al does say, he says, "There are advances today, Trixie, none miraculous," which is the name of the episode. And he's saying, he is at least admitting that there could be an advance in the boy's health, and it would be miraculous if it was. Like, he saw a good advance in terms of putting one over on the Yankton thieves and getting them to pay him to annex, convincing them of this fraudulent offer about Montana. But
yeah, because Jari comes back.
And Jari has some great lines this episode. And
I mean, Stephen Tobolowsky is just incredible. I mean, it seems like a prerequisite when he's in something, he's going to talk about his testicles or his penis in like any role. Yeah. And so he talks about the winds of change. Like,
he says, Cy Tolliver says, "It doesn't take much to get your balls tucked up, does it, Commissioner?" And then he says,
"The changes in weather.
Do you feel one coming on?"
Yeah.
And it's just a lovely one-liner, which is delivered with this. Again, Hugo Jari he's so, you wouldn't think that he would be a threatening character because he's so like snooty and almost dainty.
Yeah.
And then, but he's always just, there's another moment where they're like, Silas Adams accuses him of being gay, and he says, "No, I'm not, but just like those who are, can't we mutually gratify ourselves without missing a beat?" Which again is accidentally almost a progressive or a modern way of not being, so homophobic.
Right.
And it's great. And like the whole, let's see, what were we talking about? Walcott, after Tobolowsky says those lines, says, he has this laugh line, which is, "I'm a sinner who does not expect forgiveness, but I am not a government official." Cut. And It's a good line.
But he's like the king of that. And it's like almost too much, but like it stays right on the other side of that line. I mean,
I like it a lot.
Yeah. I mean, I like it a lot too. It's just like, it's almost like a wink and a nod to the camera.
Yeah, yeah.
In that moment,
it's edging into Coen Brothers territory.
Yeah,
like these are rubes and they say funny things.
Right.
And but it's really good.
It is. It's great.
And but it is also like, ain't the government bad? Like, kind of humor.
Yeah.
Where the Topolsky lines are a little bit more about that character's inability to like. He's always misjudging his references and this situation. Like he's like, I need to go over to Bullock's house and talk to him. And Toller's like, you'll get a pistol whipping and not learn a fucking thing. And he's like, and as soon as he learns Bullock's son is about to die, he's just like, oh, very sad, very sad. Like he can't express, he has all the qualities of the social niceties that he needs to say for his position, but he lacks the ability to give them in a way that makes sense or relates to humans.
He lacks empathy.
Yeah.
In a way.
Yeah.
He doesn't understand other people's feelings when he's talking to them. Oh wait, that's a later point.
Yeah, well, at least I think he does. I mean, at least not in Deadwood.
Yeah.
Let's see. Let's talk about Doc Cochran, who refused to operate on a hernia, or like refused to operate on a man who had been shot.
I was thinking about that, and it feels like he was basically like he does all the time. He wants to chastise people. And so he's made a value judgment on Moe's manual for being a piece of shit, because I'm sure he knows about what's going on.
We talked about this before. It's like we don't see that, but we have to assume that.
Well, everybody in the town. Well, this episode definitely proves that everybody in the town knows everything that's going on at all times, because just the fact that preacher's walking through, everybody suddenly knows that the boy's dead.
Yeah,
stuff. I mean, like word gets around for stuff. But my point is that, that Cochran knew that he was going to come back and do that thing. He was going to come back and do the surgery.
Do surgery on Moe's manual who's been shot.
He just went and checked on, because it was going to take hours to do the surgery. So he went back to go check on the Bullocks and everything, and then make sure that Jewel watched for them in some way. I can't remember if he came out or something and was looking for the doctor.
Jewel's keeping an eye on the Bullocks.
Yeah.
And Moe's manual, who again murdered his brother and is overweight. What's uncharacteristic is that Doc Cochran is usually very empathetic towards every single person in the town, and he doesn't insult people, but he
doesn't insult people based on like
things they can't control.
Right.
And so he insults the unconscious Moe's manual. He calls him a whale.
Yep.
I think, and he talks about, there being so much fat that he can't find the bullet.
Right. There's definitely a lot of fatphobic stuff in this.
It's a little light here, but it's a little uncharacteristic of Doc.
It is.
Because he's just like, he's making a show of, I'm not going to care for this guy. And the unspoken thing, like you said, is that maybe he knows Moe's manual killed his brother, and therefore that's why he doesn't feel for him.
Yeah. I mean, like, I think he obviously feels for him enough to come back and do his job. But I think the point in that scene when he tells him that he's not going to, he's got other things to do, is not that he wasn't going to do it. It's just that he wants to let them know that he doesn't like what's going on here. And that's why he's also like, he's got a Con Stapleton.
His herniated disc from Dragon Moe's.
Yeah, from Dragon Moe's, and he doesn't like fucking Con either. And he leaves, but lets Jane know what's going on. And Jane's more than capable of taking care of stuff like that. And he wasn't just going to leave him there with, nobody to take care of him. It was just that he was like, I just want you to know that I don't fucking approve of any of you people. It was like, Con's a piece of shit.
Yeah.
Moe's a piece of shit. I don't like either of them.
Yeah.
I'm out.
Yeah,
that's what he does.
And he has other patients.
Yes,
he says that.
He comes in, he passes judgment on people, and then he ends up doing what he has to do anyway.
Yeah, you're right. He's like a judgment passing machine.
Yes.
He just needs to express disapproval of someone's morals and then maybe treat them for something.
Right.
What do you think of Hofstetler and Samuel Fields in this episode?
Like, I thought it was interesting that you immediately set up this fact that he wants to die after this happening because he does not want to.
He wants to be in control of his own death.
Right. He does not want it to be a situation where he's going to be like strung up and lynched and all this stuff. He wants to be in control of his own life.
And for the viewer, Hofstetler and Samuel Fields accidentally let the horse go, which crushed the sheriff's boy.
Right. Not their fault, but they know that people are probably going to attribute this to them.
And they've been victims of attempted lynching once before in Deadwood.
Mm-hmm. So they're out in the wilderness later in the episode.
Yeah, but first, earlier in the episode, there's in the corner of the frame is a shotgun, and Hofstetler just immediately goes for the shotgun.
Right. Yeah.
And he says, and this is a little bit. The first time I saw this, it was impenetrable to me. I was like, like you said, like I didn't quite follow that the gun was for him to kill himself with.
Right.
But he also talks about the campfire. He's like, I want to be in control of my own death.
Right. I mean, he sets it out pretty clearly later what the intention of all that was. And then he starts at the campfire later. He starts telling this hypothetical story of this guy, and it's always like weird when characters do this in a story, especially when you don't quite get where they're going with it at first, and then you have to like catch up and go like, oh, he's talking about himself. Okay, now I'm paying attention. But he's basically laying out this idealistic scenario where they get the horse back, they give it to,
and they don't kill them because they're like, we caught the horse.
We caught the horse that killed your boy. Now you can do whatever you want. And now we're gonna skip town and go to Oregon.
In Oregon, yeah.
We're gonna go to Oregon and maybe we'll open up a livery together.
Yeah. Like they're like, Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid. They're like a mismatched buddy cop pair.
Right.
And it's just like they only get 2 little scenes in this episode, and those actors are awesome.
Yeah.
It's like Richard Gant, and I forget Samuel Fields' actor's name, but like they their plan is not a genius plan. Just leave town.
Right.
Do not go back to town.
Yeah.
And I think presumably they had, they're rich men and they have money there in town and also money in the livery.
Yeah.
And so they need to go back to town to get money from the livery. But it's just like, no, don't go back to Deadwood. That's a bad idea. But what I always feel when I see that scene is just like,
I think they, well, specifically Hofstetler, I think he doesn't want that to be a mark on him either.
Yeah, he has a lot of pride.
That he didn't do anything.
I think even Samuel Fields says this episode, pride has made you crazy.
Yeah.
And
so he feels like it's his duty to go get that horse and bring it back. And so that's what he's going to do.
And during their scene, you can hear the horse. They're in a campfire, but the horse is whinnying.
Yeah. Off in the distance. And it's like, well, wait, just go get it right now.
Yeah, it's like, it's literally over there. What?
Yeah, that was a thing that did not need to be in there.
Yeah.
I mean, we know where they're going, where they are. They're out on the fucking plains somewhere looking for the horse. We don't have to literally hear the horse whinnying in the distance.
Yeah. And it's like, then it just focuses on Hofstetler just goes to sleep. He's like, I'm going to get that horse. Horse whinnies, sleeps. Like, and I think a lot of that's due to the compression of their scenes. Like they get like 2 scenes in an episode.
So they have
like,
to cram as much as they can into that thing.
There's another scene that watching this episode again that I changed for me was Jewel. Jewel is standing vigil outside the Bullocks as they watch over their boy die, and Jewel, Mr. Wu has seen that everyone's sad, and I think he takes like a mixture of tea to give to the Bullocks, and he hands it to Jewel, and just I'm part of this community, and I want to, express my sorrow, and she says, Gimp can't hold the cup. And I've always taken that as this tragic misunderstanding between Wu and Jewel where she's like, no, I can't hold that. And he takes that as, fuck off, I'm racist. But I think I'd taken it with a recent rewatch of certain things later in the series. Jewel's a sweet character.
Right.
She's a good character.
Right. But
she may, like a lot of these white characters, be racist. And I think there may be an intention with that is that she can hold the cup. We've seen her hold the broom. I mean, she does have problems with holding things, but I feel like there may be an intent to be like, oh no, Joel's racist against Chinese people. Yeah. I'm not certain, but
I mean, yeah, it's just as possible.
But it's really sad for Wu because he's just like, he's literally trying to be part of this group. Right. And he lives on the same street with these people and they won't even fucking give him the time of day.
Yeah.
You know, and I want to make a historical point here. I've been reading a little bit about the Chinese in Deadwood, and they were a huge part of Deadwood. And I read an article that was quoting Jerry Bryant. I think it was on truewest magazine.com. And it was like, Jerry Bryant is a historian who I think was a advisor on this series. And, you know, basically they asked him point blank, well, you know, were the Chinese gangsters? Did they throw people into pigs? And he's like, no, the Chinese were a respectful part of this community. And they were, you know, and there's the basis for Mr. Wu was a very prosperous and successful merchant. And, but I'd say that my sense of Deadwood is that they were not so advanced that they weren't racist towards the Chinese. And there's this uncomfortable thing where it's like Chinese people wanted their bodies buried in China, and so therefore that's why they've disappeared from the cemetery. And I'm sure that there is a religious observance in burying them back in China, but at the same time, it's not a thing that's oversold in Deadwood. It's
pretty like invisible.
Yeah. I mean,
going there.
There used to be in the Adams Museum they had an archaeological dig, and they dug up parts of some of the Chinese communities, including the inspiration from Mr. Wu, whose name is I think Fi Li Wang. But they've taken down that exhibit, so they don't have it. If you go to the Adams Museum in Deadwood, they don't have it there. But they did have, to their credit, for a long time, this thing about this thriving, vibrant community. And then eventually, I think when he came back to town, Wang was like thwarted by anti-immigration Chinese policies. Like he'd go back to China. He was like one of the most successful merchants, and he would get like there's like this great I think eventually the U.S. banned all Chinese immigration because it was considered, it was like just like we're having now, like there's this anti-immigration thing, and they whipped up this idea of this threat from one specific ethnic group, and Chinese people were, as I understand it, they were actually blocked from entering the fucking U.S. And like he had to like get a special dispensation from the governor or the Senate to enter the country and return to Deadwood. And eventually he went back and died in China as an old man. That was a fucking tangent. Let's keep going. Who do you want to talk about, Chad? I got some other people here, but anyone in particular?
Well, just go down the list.
Saul. I want to talk about Saul.
Okay. What's there to say about Saul?
All right. So in this episode, Dan is like, he's charged with getting Adams and also Saul, and he's like trying to do something because he's also disturbed by William's death, and so he goes. And
this is right after he's dealt with EB.
Yeah, right after so his temper's a little bit off.
Because he's looking for Adam's shadow.
Yeah, Hawkeye. And and there's a wonderful moment where Adams is like, I gotta take a shit. It's not the kind that takes long. And it's just like it's like such a human thing to say, and it's just it's almost a sweet interaction between the two. Yeah. But anyway, when Dan sees Saul, he's like, I
want to fucking see you. And he's, what does he say? Like when I have time.
Yeah, Saul acts almost badass. Yeah. And you're like, wow, John Hawkes gets to do a different note.
Yeah. And
he'll be,
And he's like, what are you saying? And then he's like, I'm saying when I have time, I'll go over there and I'll talk to him.
And Saul's just staring at the Bullock's house like this.
or
Doc Cochran's.
Doc Cochran's, yeah. And then Dan is just flabbergasted by this, and he's just like, if I gotta pick you up and throw you over my shoulder and your little legs just kicking like a fucking turtle, I'll carry you down the fucking thoroughfare. I don't care.
Yeah, and you just feel so much sorrow for Saul, Yeah. It's like Saul is just literally trying, but
he's trying to grieve for his friend's son, and he's being called away on some
henchman's
errand that might be nothing. He has no idea what it's about.
Yeah, but I just, we always talk about how John Hawkes is a great actor, and Saul is a neutral, good character who doesn't actually, he always reacts, he never does anything on his own.
Right.
And so it's like there's this, there's a moment where you're like, oh, this will be like Winter's Bone John Hawkes, where he's a badass, and maybe Saul's going to change and do a different note. And it's just like, nope.
He just rolls over.
He's just going to roll over. But there is a nice bit where another bit with Saul that's really good was when he gets to Swearengen's office, Swearingen in David Milch style is going through a series of anti-Semitic phrases as jokes.
Yep.
And then Saul is like, he has a great point. He's like, if you want my help,
stop insulting me.
Yeah. And it's just passionate and to the point. And Al learns, I guess I shouldn't make constant Jewish insults.
But then right after that, in that same breath where he's saying that, he says something about what secret handshake or whatever do I have to fucking give you?
Well, I mean, he says that, but that's like the last rattle of his anti-Semitism.
Right.
And then he's like, now me and Saul are friends and we don't insult each other constantly.
Right.
I love that scene, and it's also a ridiculous scene because they're trying to they spend a long time going over the eating habits of this guy in Montana.
Right.
It's very strange. And they concoct eventually that they met with a guy in Montana and he put a bag over his head. That way they won't have to describe the man's face.
Well, yeah, and apparently Adams had no idea what the fuck they were going to be talking about beforehand, and he just makes up all this shit on the spot.
Yeah, but he's trying to be angry.
Yeah.
But it's just a little this side of fake. Whew. And so he's like, it
seems fake to us, but because that's the way Adams has acted around Jari the entire time that he's known him, he buys into it and believes that what he's saying is true and that he just really does not like Jari at all.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's a nice moment. It's like a win for our team.
Yeah.
How do you feel about Andy Cramed coming back as a preacher?
I mean, that is a bit of a shocker. I mean, like, you're not assuming that character's going to come back, and then all of a sudden he's a preacher, and he looks very different, and so that's why he says when he comes in, do you recognize who I am? Because honestly, it would have taken me several seconds or more to figure out who the fuck this guy is, and it may be if you had not even told me. Well, I mean, I know who the actor is, but he still looked a little strange the way his hair was done up and all that. But, I mean, there's not a lot to go on from this one interaction that he has with Farnham.
But he seems to be pretty sincere as a preacher.
He does seem to be.
And we last knew him as this card sharp who got the plague.
He does seem sincere, and he doesn't, like get angry or anything with Farnham. He just basically says, do I need to talk to somebody else that'll tell me where they are? And then he moves on about his way, and there's a great moment there too with EB where he's like, if idolatry offends you, make sure not to look to your left when you walk out. Yeah. Yeah. And there's Richardson there with the antler.
And Richardson also gets to interact with Alma this episode. And she's like, take care of my child.
And she says, I trust you. And it's like, okay.
She's like, you've done such a great job in the past, Richardson.
Yeah, right.
Please don't go in the room.
But just don't go in the room because you might frighten her. I mean, look at you.
Yeah.
He acts like such a fucking weirdo.
Yeah. What was I going to say? Oh, I wanted to say, I think when we originally covered this episode, we talked about this, and this is one of my favorite little points, which is, the reason that William Bullock died, according to a Nerdist interview with Timothy Oliphant some years after the fact, was because David Milch had a disagreement with either his manager or his parent. And so as a result, he killed off the character. There's no William Bullock in real life. There are some children, but I don't think there is any child of Bullock's that died around this time or at another time, as far as I know. And so he basically just unceremoniously, as the climactic episode of this season, he kills off the child with this thing, and Timothy Oliphant used this as a way of saying David Milch is a great off the cuff writer because he improvised this entire plot
that totally works.
Yeah, and some of his favorite writing from the season had to do with this death, and
it does a lot for Bullock's character because it takes him away from being one speed,
Yeah. And it's also, Martha and Seth are still overly formal, but their tears are streaming down their faces, and they're referring to like, ducks on the pond and plants in the garden, and they're trying to basically get the child to relax and then die.
Do you think in that scene, and maybe I'm misreading it, that specifically in that last scene where he's talking about the ducks and stuff, that she is maybe a little offended by the fact that it seems like he's talking about the child like almost in the past tense in a way?
I don't know.
I mean, they keep focusing on her face while he's talking, and she's kind of like looking in like disbelief in a way. And
well, did he really have a relationship with the boy at all?
No, and so like I think that's what's going through her head.
Yeah, I mean, it's not clear if they actually ever went duck calling together.
Right, but it sounds like this sort of thing where he's like where he is talking as though the child's already dead. Yeah. And she is still holding out hope that maybe he'll just miraculously pull through.
Well, we did the thing when we were looking at the scene again. We were like, wait, is he dead already? Like, there's always that thing in movies where it's like, you don't know if the actor is just still or playing already that they're dead, and then you have to wait on the other actors to react to the supposed death.
And you can't tell from looking at Martha. You have to look at Seth, because he's the one that's like, oh, and you see his eyes like look down like, oh, and that's how you can tell. Otherwise, because if you look at her, she just stays exactly the same the whole time. And maybe again, that's a comment on the fact that he sees what's happening and she doesn't want to accept that it's happening. Yeah. I don't know.
I agree, but he is very guilty of deciding the way things are and just pretending those are the way things are. What struck me, I think, in the last episode was, or somewhere in here, there's a scene where Charlie's leaving. He's like, Bullock is like, yeah, I'll keep an eye on Jane. And I was like, what a fucking asshole. Like, he's not going to fucking care about Jane. He doesn't give a rat's ass. Jane worships Bullock. There's very few instances where they like interact in the series, but like there's a moment or two where Jane will be like, Bullock, he's a good guy. I like that Bullock. And then Bullock has no idea who Jane is. He does not know who the fuck she is. And just like this, he's like, I have a relationship with this boy, and he's making me uncomfortable by having his chest caved in. I'm going to make up some shit about the relationship we had. I mean, I'm sure he definitely loves Bullock, and he also had affection to him when he had coffee with him that morning. Yeah. And planned to go duck hunting. Right. But, anyway.
I mean, it's just, It's how much characterization can you give to William when it's an ensemble piece with like fucking 25 characters and he's only in it for like 9 episodes or something? I mean, like, I think that's a bit of an unfair criticism of the character. I mean, if more time had been given, then maybe you'd understand more about him beyond the fact that he's just a kid.
Well, but I think it's just as this is a climactic event. Yeah. And, it's like, it would be like killing Con Stapleton and having it be the centerpiece of the season. Like, oh no, Con Stapleton's dead.
Well, but who gives a shit about Con Stapleton? But like with a kid, it's okay. Sophia, when you first meet, not that she has any characterization after the fact, because they don't.
She's practically mute.
They don't focus on her character at all. She's a puppet toy for Alma, but I think that's interesting in and of itself. But when you first meet Sophia, she's even less than that, and everybody's real fucking upset about a kid dying. Yeah. I mean, it's just the fact that it's a kid. That's it. I think that's what gives the emotional weight to it. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's also, there's so much focus on all these killers' perspective on this and how touched and sad they are about it. Yeah. And I think it's a legitimate, it's a realistic focus, and also it's a good symbolic focus, because again, it's on a symbolic level, children are innocence and potential, and this is a good example of the ending of innocence and potential. And none of these people have innocence or very much potential. No. So they need all the help they can get.
You got anything else?
I guess that's it. Anyways, I guess. Thank you for watching.
Like, subscribe, share. Send it to your family. Send it to your kids. Put it in their brain.
Don't do that.
Buck-toothed beaver slapping logs. You can't keep the gold from me.